It's not a hot take to say the 2004 Yu-Gi-Oh! Movie Pyramid of Light was a disappointment. The plot is underdeveloped, the villain is underwhelming, and it feels more like fan service than anything else. This is especially punctuated by how the movie does not stand on its own 2 feet at all, requiring the viewer to be familiar with the story leading up to this point, as it takes place smack dab 2/3 of the way through the anime. And while this is a fair critique, I'm going to focus my review through the lens of someone who is familiar with the story because, after all, if you're watching this review 21 plus years post-release of the movie, you probably know a thing or two about the franchise. So let's go through what worked and didn't work for the first theatrical release of the beloved anime. Seto Kaiba is widely regarded as one of the best Yu-Gi-Oh! Characters ever, and yet it is possible to have too much of him. Right off the bat, we're shown a duel simulation of Kaiba trying, and failing, to defeat the Pharaoh's God cards. This is followed by Kaiba venturing off on his jet to visit Pegasus for an answer. So now he's been established as a guy who must overcome a seemingly impossible challenge. If you didn't know any better, you might think he's the protagonist. Then comes the main act, which involves Kaiba mopping the floor with the Pharaoh for the bulk of their duel. Of note, Kaiba is the only one in the movie with 2 full-length duels. This hyperfixation on Kaiba makes plenty of sense. Of all the characters in the series, he can make the biggest impact on a viewer in the shortest amount of time, delivering one-liners with the same lovable arrogance we've come to expect.
You're playing a cream puff and an elf. Well then it's your funeral!
He's got a jet shaped like his favorite card, has the most interesting of the movie promos in Blue Eyes Shining Dragon, and even commands his very own theme song composed just for the movie. Kaiba is also a big fan favorite, especially in the West where Eric Stewart's portrayal has won the hearts of plenty. Interestingly enough, this movie was actually commissioned by 4Kids, so it's no surprise they went with the Kaiba-centric approach, but this obviously comes at the expense of Yugi, the Pharaoh, and even another fan favorite in Joey, who mostly serves as comic relief in the movie.
So if you want to get to the king of games, you'll have to go through me, the godfather of games, capiche?
As for Yugi and the Pharaoh, these two have to share screen time, so it's already challenging to get the viewer to buy into both of them in a 90-minute movie without dedicating so much of that little time to another character. I wouldn't even be mad if they simply shared the limelight, but from the way I see it, both Yugi and the Pharaoh play second fiddle to Kaiba. And since Yugi and the Pharaoh win the day anyway, we get no payoff for the apparent main character of the movie. While the focus on Kaiba is cranked to the extreme, it did give us a couple of worthwhile moments for Kaiba, starting with his revenge against Pegasus. Kaiba has a knack for losing to lead villains, more so than you would think at least, so for him to avenge his Duelist Kingdom loss to Pegasus definitely helps his duel shrinking case. Kaiba duels Pegasus by wagering his 3 blue eyes so that if he wins, Pegasus will give him the card he created to counter the Egyptian god cards, that being Blue Eyes Shining Dragon. Pegasus kicks things off with a bang, summoning a handful of iconic 2 monsters across his first 2 turns, including Blue Eyes, Summon Skull, Dark Magician Girl, and Gemini Elf. Kaiba then flips the tables with his Return from a Different Dimension combo to whip out XYZ Dragon Cannon, which pops Toon World and thus all Toon monsters, then attacks directly for game. It's a fun duel, and while a bit on the shorter side, does show just how much more superior Kaiba is to Pegasus when Pegasus doesn't have the Millennium Eye giving him knowledge of all of Kaiba's cards or cards unreleased to the public, 2 advantages that clearly helped him defeat Kaiba the first time they dueled.
That's all, folks.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Is rich in lore, and there are plenty of aspects that are quite frankly underused or poorly executed in the anime and manga. A movie would be a great place to feature those elements, like how Dark Side of Dimensions explains the death of Shadi and gives closure to Kaiba, who in the manga never got his one final duel with the Pharaoh or even see him off. Pyramid of Light could have featured one of the more underutilized Millennium items, the scale, tie the events of the movie to helping the Pharaoh further recover his memories, or giving Anubis a motive related to something already established in the anime, like how Yu-Gi-Oh! R, the spin-off manga, builds on the death of Pegasus. Instead, Pyramid of Light spoon-feeds us a villain nobody asked for with not enough backstory to care after he's gone, and even from a character development standpoint, the Pharaoh and Yugi break no new ground, and Kaiba seems to outright reverse some of his development he experienced throughout Battle City. This movie breaks continuity in some ways and doesn't really mesh cleanly with the anime otherwise. While most of the movie lore seems to be doing its own thing, one idea I do approve of is Pegasus creating a counter to the Egyptian god cards. This is one of the few, if not the only thing, that does build on something established in the original story, which is that Pegasus feared the power of the Egyptian god cards. In the manga and anime, he took action by burying the cards in Egyptian tombs, so for the movie to build on this with a backup plan that Pegasus created an entirely new card as their counter makes plenty of sense. In fact, it makes so much sense that the very idea is used in the spin-off manga Yu-Gi-Oh! R, where he designed a second set of god cards as an answer to the main three, but upon realizing how powerful they might be, stopped short of actually creating them. You can check out a more detailed rundown of Yu-Gi-Oh! R with a card in the corner. What's more, using an evolved form of Blue Eyes as the answer makes perfect sense, not just because it's easily marketable and will sell, but because of the established lore that Blue Eyes is as powerful as the god cards. Unfortunately, in the movie, we never get to see Blue Eyes Shining Dragon face off versus Slifer, Obelisk, and Ra, robbing us of a showdown between the best of Seto and Kisara versus the Pharaoh's mightiest. While the original anime has aged poorly from the standpoint of the dual action and strength of cards, it still boasts arguably the best collection of villains, namely the main trio of Pegasus, Merrick, and Bakura, who each bring something unique, compelling, and devastating to the fray. And this makes the performance of our lead antagonist of the movie, Anubis, so frustrating. First, his backstory is way underexplained. All we learn from the movie is that he's an evil sorcerer the pharaoh defeated 5,000 years ago. That's it. That's all we get. We have no explanation as to why he had beef with the pharaoh back then, or where the Pyramid of Light even came from, or what it can do. Fortunately, some of this was solved with a novelization of the movie that was released only in Japanese, where it was explained that Akhenaten, yeah, that guy who was the mastermind behind getting the 7 Millennium items created, also had the Pyramid of Light created as a counterpart to the Millennium Puzzle so that his son, Priest Seto, could challenge the pharaoh for title of king. He then mummified alive his most loyal servant so that when Seto was reincarnated and the pharaoh returned, this servant could deliver the Pyramid of Light to Seto to help him overtake the pharaoh. But when the servant threatened that mummifying him alive would cause him to turn on Seto, because why would you continue loyalty to a man who so viciously took your life, Akhenaten has the head of a jackal surgically stitched onto the servant and gave him the name Anubis, as he now resembled the Lord of Mummification. This is a pretty gruesome sequence of events that gives Anubis a very credible motive because, sure enough, when he comes to in modern day, he has it out for both the pharaoh and Seto. It still has some holes in it, like why did Akhenaten think this plan made any sense rather than just giving Seto the Pyramid of Light right away, or how did Akhenaten know Atem and Seto would be reincarnated because this event takes place before the battle with Zord? And given that the pharaoh saw a vision of this ritual taking place in the novel, he would surely recognize Akhenaten as a traitor when he got to the world of memories. Second problem with Anubis is his name. While the novel explains how Anubis got his name, I still think it's too confusing since the name Anubis will always be associated with the deity. In fact, the original manga itself makes reference to the actual Anubis when Shadi first appears. It seems like the original script did intend for Anubis to be the actual Anubis,
the Egyptian lord of the dead, Anubis,
whereas the novel version changes things up. Either way, I would have settled on another name. Third is his lack of screen time. He takes over for Kaiba in the final duel with the pharaoh, at which point he only gets 2 turns of his own. In a story about card games, for the main villain to only get 2 turns is inexcusable. Then, even when he takes on his jackal form, he's defeated in a couple of minutes. At no point does anyone or anything feel in danger, except for maybe a minute out of 90, and that's a huge reason why he's so underwhelming. While I do think the Pyramid of Light is underdeveloped, even with the backstory from the novel, I do at the very least like its premise and design. It's the counterpart to the Millennium Puzzle, as illustrated in how they're literally inverted to each other. This concept could go in a number of different directions, as shown in how the novel version further built on the reason for its creation to empower Priest Seto to the throne. But as the pharaoh so eloquently points out,
so the Pyramid of Light is more than just an ancient artifact. It's also a card.
And that brings me to my next critique, which is that the card form is just really dumb. The Egyptian god cards are supposed to be the behemoths of duel monsters, nearly impossible to take down. I'm all for Kaiba's quest to find the answer to the god cards, but the answer literally ends up being flip a trap card over. It's so anticlimactic and so simple even a novice could do it. So for Kaiba to pretend like he accomplished something grand by taking down the god cards when the card literally just says, remove the god cards from play, is a poor way to quote-unquote overcome the god cards. Poor Obelisk couldn't even believe this nonsense when he tried touching the pyramid. He's like, you serious right now? While most of the newly debuted cards in the movie were a bit lackluster, Blue Eye's Shining Dragon definitely steals the show with its great design, animation, and the fact that it's Pegasus' answer to the otherwise 3 mightiest monsters of the game. It also assists Kaiba in not only nearly defeating the Pharaoh, but assists the Pharaoh in defeating Anubis once and for all. It's definitely unfortunate that the real live version doesn't have the signature effect that it has in the movie of destroying any card on the field, and ironically couldn't even be summoned in the TCG since Blue Eye's Ultimate, which is needed to tribute summon for this card, wasn't released until the following year. But as far as its role in the movie goes, it's the kind of card I would expect as a worthwhile answer to the God cards, because it actually takes effort to bring out and aligns with the lore from the original that the White Dragon was on level with the Egyptian god monsters. So that's 4 things that I thought worked, or at least were on the verge of working, and 4 things that otherwise make this movie a poor debut for Yu-Gi-Oh! On the big screen. And if you were to ask me, well, how would you have gone about Pyramid of Light? I'd say subscribe and turn on those notifications, because next week, my rewrite of Pyramid of Light debuts.